The Crimson Coliseum floated in the darkness of space like a massive red jewel. It was the most famous battle arena in the known galaxy, a place where only the strongest and deadliest creatures came to prove themselves. For 300 years, the arena had hosted tournaments where apex predators from across the stars fought for glory, honor, and prizes that could buy entire planets. The registration hall was busy that morning. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the massive space, but they all had one thing in common. They were hunters. They were killers. They were the beings who sat at the top of their world's food chains. Kang Day walked through the entrance and looked around. He was average height for a human, maybe 6 feet tall with dark hair and tired eyes. His jacket was old and patched in several places. He carried a simple duffel bag over one shoulder. Compared to the massive aliens around him, he looked small and fragile. The registration desk was staffed by a creature called Clickbearer. It stood nearly 10 feet tall with a hard shell covering its body and multiple arms that moved with precise coordination. Its compound eyes looked down at Day as he approached. "Spectator entrance is on level 3, Clickbearer said without interest. Its voice came out in clicks and whistles, translated by a collar device around what might have been its neck. "I'm here to register," Day said calmly. Clickbearer's eyes focused on him properly for the first time. Several of its arms stopped moving. "Register? For what?" "The tournament." There was a long pause. Then Clickbearer made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "You are confused, Softskin. This tournament is for apex hunters only, predator species. You should check the information boards for other events more suitable for your kind." Day pulled out a data pad and slid it across the counter. "According to the Galactic Species Registry, humans are classified as persistence hunters. We hunt, that makes us predators. I want to register." Clickbearer picked up the pad with one of its smaller arms. Its eyes scanned the information. The laughter stopped. It tapped at its own terminal for several minutes, checking and cross-checking data. Its body language shifted from amused to confused to something that might have been concerned. "This is irregular," it finally said. "Humans are listed as Class 7 persistence omnivores. You are barely qualifiers. Your species has no venom, no natural weapons, no armor plating. You are soft, fragile. But we are hunters," Dee repeated. "Do the rules say I can't register?" Clickbearer was silent for a long time. It consulted with other officials through its communication device. Day could see them on screens, various alien species all looking confused or amused. Finally, Clickbearer turned back to him. "The rules do not explicitly forbid your registration," it admitted. "But you must understand what you are entering. Competitors die in this arena. They die badly. Your species has no recorded combat achievements in the galactic database. You will be matched against creatures who have killed dozens of sentients." "I understand," Day said. "I still want to register." More consultation followed. Dee stood patiently and waited. He watched other competitors pass by, creatures of nightmare and legend. A massive reptilian being with scales like armor plates, a predator covered in quills that dripped with poison, a hunter that seemed to be made of living shadow. Finally, Clickbearer processed his registration. "You will be placed in the preliminary warm-up match," it said. The way it spoke made clear this was meant as an insult. This match occurs before the main tournament begins. It is entertainment for the crowd. Your opponent will be Vrask the Render, a Thurian mega-predator. He has killed 17 sentients in previous tournaments. Day took the registration token. "When is the match?" "Tomorrow, 2nd hour after station dawn. May your death be quick, human." As Day walked away, Clickbearer immediately began sending messages. Within minutes, news of the human's registration spread through the arena complex. In the betting halls, odds makers laughed and set impossible numbers. 500 to 1 against the human, some set it at 1,000 to 1. In the competitor quarters, predators from a dozen worlds heard the news and found it amusing. A human? In the Crimson Coliseum? It was absurd. Humans were known in the galaxy, but barely. They were a young spacefaring species, not particularly strong or fast with no remarkable abilities. They came from a planet called Earth, which was technically classified as a death world, but that classification was buried in old survey data that few species bothered to read. The news reached the galactic media networks by evening. Broadcasters across multiple systems announced it as a novelty, a piece of comedy before the real tournament began. "See the foolish human face certain doom," the advertisements proclaimed. "Watch the warm-up match before the true warriors take the stage." On a research vessel 3 light hours away, a human woman named Jiwan nearly dropped her datapad when she saw the news. She was a xenobiologist, one of only a few hundred humans working in this sector of space. She immediately tried to contact the arena, to reach Day, to warn him or stop him or at least understand why he was doing this, but communications to registered competitors were restricted. She could only watch and wait. That night, Day sat in his assigned quarters. The room was small but clean, designed to accommodate various body types. He unpacked his equipment and laid it out carefully. A composite blade, standard military issue from Earth, a coil of synthetic rope, a small medical kit, a water recycler, no powered armor, no energy weapons, no shields. In the rooms around him, other competitors prepared in their own ways. Some meditated. Some sharpened weapons that were parts of their own bodies. Some consumed pre-hunt meals of live prey. The sounds echoed through the halls, roars, screams, the grinding of claws on metal. Day checked his blade's edge, tested the rope's strength, and organized his medical supplies. Then he sat on the sleeping platform and closed his eyes. He thought about his colony ship, the one that was failing and dying in deep space. He thought about the 300 people on board who were counting on him. The prize money from even a preliminary match would be enough to repair their critical systems. He had not told them what he was doing. They would have tried to stop him. They would have said it was suicide. Maybe it was, but it was the only chance they had. Day opened his eyes and looked at his hands. They were not special hands. No claws, no scales, just skin and bone and muscle. But these hands had worked on farms and repaired engines and held weapons when necessary. These hands belonged to a species that had climbed from caves to stars. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They had no venom or natural armor. But they had something else, something most of the galaxy did not understand. They had endurance. They had persistence. They had the ability to keep going long after any reasonable creature would have given up and died. Tomorrow the galaxy would laugh at him. Tomorrow they would watch and expect him to die quickly. Tomorrow, Frask the Render would enter the arena expecting easy prey. Tomorrow Kang Day would show them what it meant to be human. He closed his eyes again and slept. He dreamed of running. Endless running across open plains, chasing prey that could sprint faster but could never maintain the pace. He dreamed of his ancestors, who had hunted with nothing but sharpened stones and refused to stop until the hunt was won. When he woke, he was ready. The Crimson Coliseum could hold 50,000 spectators, and every seat was filled. Beings from across the galaxy had come to watch the tournament, but more importantly, they had come to see the joke, the human, the soft-skinned creature who thought it could fight among apex predators. The betting halls had made fortunes just from the absurdity of it. In the preparation chambers beneath the arena, Day stretched his muscles and controlled his breathing. He could hear the crowd above, their sounds filtered through layers of metal and stone. Excitement, anticipation, laughter. The chamber door opened and a guard gestured for him to follow. The guard was a hulking creature with 4 arms and skin like rock. It looked at Day with something that might have been pity. They walked through corridors lit by strange lights that hurt Day's eyes. He could hear other competitors in their own chambers. Roars, howls, the sounds of creatures preparing to kill. Finally, they reached the gate that led to the arena floor. Through the gaps in the gate, Day could see the arena itself. The floor had been transformed into a simulated jungle environment. Massive trees rose toward the ceiling, their leaves thick and dark. Vines hung between them. The ground was covered in thick vegetation and hidden streams. It was beautiful and deadly. "Your opponent chose jungle terrain," the guard said. "It is his preferred hunting ground. He knows every advantage it offers." Dee nodded. He had expected nothing less. Across the arena, another gate was opening. Frask the Render emerged, and the crowd exploded with cheers. He was massive, standing 9 feet tall on powerful legs. His body was covered in thick scales that gleamed under the lights. 4 eyes glowed with predatory intelligence. His mouth was filled with teeth designed to tear flesh from bone. When he opened his jaws, saliva dripped out that hissed when it hit the ground. Acid. Frask raised his arms and roared. The sound was designed by millions of years of evolution to freeze prey in terror. It worked on most species. The crowd roared back their approval. Then Day's gate opened. He walked out into the light, and the crowd's tone changed. Laughter, mocking calls. Some species made sounds of pity. Holographic displays around the arena showed the betting odds. They had gotten worse. Some bookmakers were now offering 1,000 to 1 against him. Day ignored it all. He focused on the terrain, on his opponent, on his own body. He did his pre-combat checks by instinct. His blade was secure. His rope was ready. His body was warm and loose. High above the arena floor in the VIP section, the tournament organizers watched. They were already congratulating themselves on the entertainment value. This would be over in minutes, and it would be a perfect warm-up for the real matches to follow. The countdown began. 10 seconds. Holographic numbers appeared in the air, visible to everyone. Vrask lowered into a hunting crouch, his muscles coiling. Day shifted his weight, his body relaxed but ready. 5 seconds. The crowd noise grew louder. 3 seconds. Vrask's eyes fixed on Day with absolute focus. 1 second. 0. Vrask launched forward with terrifying speed. His claws dug into the ground and propelled him across the distance. He was fast, faster than anything that big should be. His jaws opened wide, acid dripping. Day ran, but he did not run away. He ran perpendicular to Vrask's charge, moving at an angle that forced the predator to adjust. Vrask turned, his momentum carrying him past where Day had been. He snarled and charged again. Day was already moving, running through the jungle terrain. He was not as fast as Vrask in a straight sprint, but he was fast enough. More importantly, he was agile. He ducked under vines, leaped over roots, changed direction smoothly. The crowd's laughter began to fade. This was not what they expected. Prey ran in panic in straight lines until they were caught. This human was running with purpose, with control. Vrask chased him, confident this would end quickly. All prey tired eventually. All prey made mistakes. He had hunted thousands of creatures across dozens of worlds. This would be no different. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Day kept running. His breathing was controlled, steady. He had trained for this. Humans had evolved for this. On Earth, his ancestors had chased prey across vast distances, running for hours, sometimes days. Their bodies were designed for endurance in ways that most species could not comprehend. Vrask began to realize something was wrong. His own breathing was getting heavier. His muscles were starting to burn. How was this small creature still running? 15 minutes, 20. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were confused. Some were starting to understand what they were seeing, but most could not believe it. In the VIP section, the organizers were frantically pulling up data files on humans. Day kept running. He was sweating heavily now, but that was good. Humans were one of the few species that could regulate their body temperature through sweating. It was incredibly efficient. He could run for hours if he needed to. Vrask was slowing down. His charges were less powerful. His turns were wider. Confusion showed in his 4 eyes. Nothing ran like this. Nothing refused to stop. What kind of prey was this? 25 minutes. Vrask stumbled. His legs were shaking. His breathing came in ragged gasps. He tried to roar, but it came out weak. 30 minutes. Vrask collapsed. The crowd was silent. Completely silent. 50,000 beings making no sound at all. Day stopped running. He stood 30 feet from Vrask, watching carefully. The predator was still dangerous. Wounded creatures were often the most dangerous. But Vrask could barely lift his head. His body had given everything it had, and it was not enough. Day approached slowly, his blade drawn. He did not gloat. He did not celebrate. This was just a hunt, and the hunt was ending. When he was close enough, he moved quickly and precisely. His blade found the gap in Vrask's scales that he had studied in the arena files. One clean strike. Vrask the Render, 17-time killer, champion of 3 worlds, died without understanding what had happened. Day stepped back. The arena's medical sensors confirmed the kill. Lights flashed. The match was over. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the arena erupted. Not in cheers, but in chaos. Half the crowd was shouting in denial. The other half was trying to understand what they had just witnessed. In the betting halls, fortunes changed hands. Systems crashed from the sudden load. Day walked back toward his gate. His body ached. His muscles burned. But he was alive. And he had won. In the preparation chamber, guards stared at him with new eyes. The one who had escorted him earlier approached carefully as if Day might be dangerous. That was unexpected, it said quietly. Was it? Day replied. He sat down and began the process of recovery. Water, food, rest. His body needed all 3. On the research vessel 3 light hours away, Jiwan watched the replay for the 5th time. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. She understood what the galaxy did not yet understand. She pulled up files on human evolution, on persistence hunting, on the way humans had survived and thrived on Earth. Then she began making calls. Other humans needed to know about this, about Day, about what he had just proven. In the VIP section, the tournament organizers sat in stunned silence. Finally, one of them spoke. That was a fluke, an accident. Frask underestimated him. Another organizer pulled up more data. Earth is classified as a death world. Class 9, how did we miss this? Nobody reads the full classifications, a third admitted. Death worlds are common. We assumed it meant nothing special. They looked at each other. They had a problem. They could not remove the human from the tournament now. The rules were sacred, but if he continued, if he won more matches, it would be a disaster for their carefully maintained hierarchy. Who is next in the bracket? The first organizer asked. Gorath of Fenthar 4, he has never lost a match. He is cunning and adaptable. Good. Schedule the human against him. Gorath will end this. But even as they made plans, doubt crept in. They had just watched a creature they thought was prey run an apex predator to death. What else could humans do that they did not know about? Down in his chamber, Day lay on the sleeping platform and closed his eyes. One match won. The prize money would help, but it would not be enough. He needed to win more. He needed to keep going. Tomorrow would be harder. He knew that. But hard was something humans understood. Hard was what they had been dealing with since they climbed out of the trees. He slept and dreamed of running. The footage spread across the galactic network like wildfire. Within 6 hours, every major news outlet in 17 systems was showing the match. The human running. Frask collapsing. The impossible victory. Most species watched with confusion. Some watched with growing unease. On a research station orbiting a blue giant star, a Kelthani xenobiologist named Vresh paused her work to watch the replay. She had studied hundreds of predator species, had written papers on hunting strategies and evolutionary advantages. What she saw in this footage did not make sense until she pulled up Earth's biological survey data. Then it made too much sense. She called her colleague, a human named Tai Min, who worked in the station's engineering section. When he answered, she could see he was smiling. You knew, she said. It was not a question. I knew humans could do it, Tai Min replied. I did not know if this particular human would. But yes, I knew it was possible. Your species hunted by exhaustion, Fresh said, scrolling through the data. Persistence hunting. I have read about it, but I thought it was a historical curiosity. Something your ancestors did before they developed weapons. We still do it, Taman said. Not for food anymore, but we run marathons, ultra-marathons. Some humans run for 24 hours straight. 48 hours. There are races on Earth that go for days. Fresh's scales rippled, a sign of discomfort. Why would you do that to yourselves? Because we can, Taman said simply. Because somewhere in our DNA we are still those ancestors who refuse to stop chasing. It is what we are. That conversation was recorded and released to the public. Within hours it had been viewed billions of times. Other human experts began giving interviews, explaining aspects of human evolution that most species had never considered important. A Drellian military analyst pointed out that humans had an unusually high pain tolerance and could function with injuries that would incapacitate other species. A Valorian medical researcher noted that human bodies could convert multiple fuel types into energy while moving, something that gave them remarkable endurance. A Krenthian historian discovered that humans had crossed entire continents on foot, had explored frozen wastelands and burning deserts, had climbed mountains that would kill most species just from the attempt. The galaxy began to understand that Earth's death world classification was not just about dangerous wildlife. It was about a planet that had shaped its dominant species into something unusual, something persistent. In the Crimson Coliseum, the tournament organizers held emergency meetings. The other competitors were demanding answers. Some were withdrawing from the tournament. Others were angry that they had not been properly informed about human capabilities. We cannot remove him, one organizer insisted. The rules are absolute. Once registered and victorious, a competitor must be allowed to continue until defeated or until they withdraw voluntarily. Then we make the next match impossible, another said. Gorath is our best option. He does not rely on speed or strength alone. He thinks, he plans. He will find a way to defeat the human. They scheduled the match for the next day. There would be no long rest period. The human would still be recovering from his first fight. It was not explicitly against the rules, but it was certainly not fair. They learned about the schedule from a guard who seemed almost apologetic. Normally, competitors get 3 days rest between matches, the guard said. But they have changed the schedule. Your next match is tomorrow, Day nodded. He had expected something like this. Fair fights were not guaranteed here. He spent the rest of the day recovering as best he could. Ice for his muscles, protein for repair, water to rehydrate. A maintenance worker knocked on his chamber door that evening. The worker was human, a young man named Hyunsu who looked nervous but determined. I am not supposed to be here, Hyunsu said quietly. But I wanted to help. I brought supplies. He handed over a bag containing high-quality nutrition bars, pain medication, and a better water recycler. Thank you, Day said, genuinely grateful. I watched your match, Hyunsu continued. We all did. Every human in this sector. You made us proud. Most species treat us like we are nothing special, like we are just another minor race, but you showed them we are more than they think. Day looked at the young man and saw hope in his eyes. It made Day feel the weight of what he was carrying. This was no longer just about his colony ship. It had become bigger than that. Who is Gorath? Day asked. Hyunsu pulled up data on his personal device. He is from Fenthar 4 in Iceworld. He is strategic, patient. He has won 12 matches and never lost. He does not rush. He studies his opponents and finds their weaknesses. They looked at the footage of Gorath's previous matches. The creature was impressive. Large but not massive, covered in white fur with black stripes. 6 limbs, 4 for movement, and 2 equipped with natural blades. His eyes showed intelligence and calculation. He will not chase you, Hyunsu said. He will try to trap you or wound you and wait for you to weaken. Day studied the footage carefully. What kind of terrain does he prefer? Cold environments. But he is adaptable. He has won in jungles, deserts, and urban settings. After Hyunsu left, Day continued studying. He knew his advantages and his limitations. He was not stronger than Gorath. He was not faster. But he could think. Humans were tool users. They were adaptable. They were creative when they needed to be. On her research vessel, Jiwon finally managed to send a message to Day through unofficial channels. She had help from other humans working in the arena complex. The message was simple but important. They will try to eliminate you through unfair matches and rule changes. Gorath is dangerous because he thinks he will not make the same mistake Vrask made. Use the terrain. Use tools. Remember that humans survived because we adapted. We are not the strongest, but we are the smartest about using what we have. Also, I am sending you detailed biological data on Fenthar 4 species. There may be something useful. Day read the data carefully. Fenthar 4 was a frozen world with long nights. Species there had excellent night vision but were sensitive to rapid temperature changes. Their metabolism was adapted to cold, but could be disrupted by heat. It was not much, but it was something. Across the galaxy, humans were having a moment of collective awakening. For decades, they had been a minor species, polite but largely ignored in galactic politics. Most aliens saw them as soft creatures from a distant planet, not particularly threatening, not particularly impressive. Now they were watching one of their own fight apex predators and win. Viewing numbers for the next match were breaking records. Humans who had never cared about the Crimson Coliseum were now planning their schedules around watching Day's next fight. On Earth itself, the home world that most galactic species barely knew existed, billions of humans watched the footage. In cities and towns, in space stations and colony ships, humans felt something they had not felt in their short time among the stars. Pride. A human diplomat named Bora, who had been trying for years to get better representation in the Galactic Council, suddenly found that other species were returning her messages. They wanted to talk about trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchanges. Things that had been impossible just days ago were now under discussion. She knew it was because they were afraid. They were realizing that they had underestimated humanity, and they wanted to correct that mistake before it became a problem. Bora was smart enough to use the opportunity. She began carefully crafting proposals that would benefit humanity's position in galactic politics. The door had opened. Now it was time to walk through it. In the Crimson Coliseum, night fell. The station dimmed its lights to simulate a planetary cycle. In his chamber, Day lay awake and thought about the next day. He thought about Gorath, about strategy, about survival, but mostly he thought about endurance. That was the real human advantage, not strength, not speed. The simple, stubborn refusal to give up. His body ached from the first match. His muscles were not fully recovered. He was going into the next fight at a disadvantage. But humans had always been at a disadvantage. That was how they learned to win. He closed his eyes and focused on his breathing. In and out, steady and controlled. The same breathing rhythm his ancestors had used while running down prey across the African savanna. The same breathing that had carried humans to the top of Earth's food chain. Tomorrow would be harder. Tomorrow would test him in new ways. But tomorrow was still tomorrow. Tonight he would rest. Tonight he would recover. Tonight he would be human. And being human meant never stopping until the job was done. The arena was even more crowded for the second match. Species that had never cared about the tournament before were now watching. The betting odds had changed dramatically. Day was no longer at 1,000 to 1. He was at 20 to 1. Some bookmakers were even offering 10 to 1. This was still heavily in favor of Gorath, but it was a massive shift. The galaxy was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, the human could win. Day stood in the preparation chamber and tried to focus. His body was stiff and sore. One day was not enough recovery time, and the organizers knew it. This was part of their strategy to eliminate him. He accepted that and moved on. Complaining would change nothing. The guard who came to escort him was different this time. This one showed no pity, only cold professionalism. The terrain has been set as Arctic environment, it said. Your opponent's preference, of course it was. Day nodded and followed. The gate opened and bitter cold hit him immediately. The arena floor had been transformed into a frozen wasteland. Snow covered everything. Ice formations jutted from the ground like crystalline teeth. The temperature was well below freezing. Day's breath came out in visible clouds. Across the arena, Gorath emerged from his gate. He looked perfectly at home in the environment. His white and black fur was thick and seemed to absorb the cold rather than fight it. His 6 limbs moved with confident grace across the ice. When he saw Day, his eyes showed calculation rather than aggression. The crowd roared, but this time the sound was different. There was anticipation, uncertainty. They did not know what would happen, and that made it more interesting than any match in years. The countdown began. Day adjusted his grip on his blade and tested his footing on the ice. It was treacherous. Every movement had to be careful. He had the rope coiled in his other hand, ready to use. The countdown reached 0. Gorath did not charge. He moved carefully to the side, circling. His eyes never left Day. He was studying, analyzing. This was a predator who thought before acting. Day moved as well, keeping distance between them. The cold was already seeping through his clothing. Humans could survive cold environments, but not comfortably and not forever. The clock was against him more than it had been against Vrask. Gorath made a sudden dash forward, closing half the distance between them in seconds. Then he stopped and circled again. He was testing Day's reactions, looking for patterns. Day understood the strategy. Gorath was trying to learn how he moved, how fast he could react, whether he would panic. So Day gave him false information. He moved slower than he actually could. He pretended to slip on the ice once. Gorath's eyes gleamed. He thought he had found weaknesses. The next attack came fast. Gorath charged from an angle, his blade limbs extended. Day dodged, but not by much. One blade caught his jacket and tore through the fabric. The crowd gasped, but Day had positioned himself near one of the ice formations. As Gorath turned for another strike, Day used his rope. He had been carrying it ready, and now he whipped it around one of Gorath's limbs and then around the ice formation. Gorath pulled back, and the rope went taut. The ice formation was solid, anchored deep. For just a moment, Gorath was caught. Day moved in with his blade, aiming for vulnerable points he had studied in the biological data. But Gorath was fast. He twisted, broke the rope with his free blade limb, and counterattacked in one smooth motion. The blade caught Day across his arm. Blood sprayed onto the white snow, bright red against the cold landscape. The crowd erupted. First blood to Gorath. Day backed away, holding his arm. The wound was not deep, but it hurt and it was bleeding. The cold was making it worse, making his fingers numb. He needed to change the situation. He ran, not in a straight line like before. The ice made that impossible. He ran in a pattern, moving between ice formations, using them as cover. Gorath pursued, but carefully. He was not going to make Frask's mistake. He was pacing himself, staying fresh. But Day was not trying to exhaust Gorath this time. He was trying something else. As he ran, he deliberately kicked up snow. He grabbed handfuls and threw them in the air. He made as much movement and disturbance as possible. The arena was enclosed, which meant the air circulation was controlled. The heat from the lights above, minimal as it was, combined with all his movement, began to create small changes in air temperature. Gorath did not notice at first. He was focused on the hunt, on cornering his prey, but after 15 minutes of chase, something felt wrong. The temperature was less stable. Small pockets of warmer air were mixing with the cold. Species from Fenthar 4 were adapted to stable, cold environments. Rapid temperature fluctuations disrupted their metabolism. It was a subtle effect, but it was real. Gorath began to feel sluggish. Not much, just a little. His movements were slightly slower. His thinking was slightly less sharp, Day noticed. He had been watching for exactly this. His arm still hurt and bled, but he could function. Humans had remarkable pain tolerance when they needed it. When survival was at stake, he changed his pattern. Instead of running away, he began to engage more directly. Quick strikes with his blade, then retreat. Force Gorath to move more, to work harder, to generate more heat. The fight became a strange dance. Gorath would attack with his superior strength and weapons. Day would dodge or deflect, never taking the full force, always moving. Then Day would counterattack, forcing Gorath to respond, to move, to work. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. The crowd was silent again, watching something they did not fully understand. This was not the traditional combat they expected. This was something stranger. Gorath's movements were definitely slower now. The temperature fluctuations, small as they were adding up. His metabolism was struggling to compensate. He was still dangerous, still capable of killing Day with one good strike, but he was declining. Day's arm had stopped bleeding as much, the cold helping despite the pain it caused. He was tired, his body still not recovered from the first match, but he could keep going. That was what humans did. He saw an opening. Gorath overextended slightly on an attack, his blade limb going just a bit too far. Day moved in, using his smaller size to get under Gorath's guard. His blade found a joint between armor plates. The spot G1's biological data had marked as vulnerable. The strike was clean and deep. Gorath roared and pulled back, but the damage was done. One of his limbs was badly wounded, barely functional. Now the advantage shifted. Gorath was slower and wounded, but he was also more dangerous. Wounded predators often were. He changed his strategy, becoming more aggressive, taking more risks. 3 hours passed too quickly. Day woke from his brief rest feeling worse than when he had laid down. His arm throbbed despite the medication. His muscles were stiff. His body was demanding more recovery time than he could give it. He forced himself to eat more. Food was fuel, and he would need all the fuel he could get. He drank water until he thought he might be sick. Hydration was critical. Hyunsu helped him check his equipment. The blade was still good. The rope had been replaced. He had fresh bandages for his arm. Everyone is watching, Hyunsu said quietly. Not just humans. Everyone. This has become the most viewed event in the galaxy this year. Day nodded. He could feel the weight of those eyes. Millions of beings across dozens of worlds all watching to see if the human would finally fall. The guard came too soon. Time was up. The first opponent was the Sethrak warrior. The arena had been transformed into a desert environment, all sand and scorching heat. The Sethrak was a serpentine creature, 20 feet long, covered in scales that shimmered in the light. Its fangs dripped with venom that could kill most species in seconds. The countdown began and ended. The Sethrak moved with incredible speed, its body flowing across the sand like water. Dee tried to keep distance, but the creature was fast. Too fast. The first bite caught his leg. The fangs sank in deep and venom pumped into his bloodstream. The Sethrak pulled back, confident the fight was over. Most species would be dead or paralyzed within seconds. Day stumbled. His leg went numb. The venom was working. But he did not fall. Humans from Earth had evolved resistance to a remarkable variety of toxins. They had lived alongside venomous snakes, spiders, scorpions, and insects for millions of years. Their bodies had learned to cope with venom in ways most species could not. The venom was affecting him. His leg was useless. His vision was blurring. But his body was fighting back, his liver and kidneys processing the toxin, his immune system mounting a response. The Sethrak was confused. The prey should be dead. It moved in for another strike. Day was ready this time. He could barely see, but he could hear. He could sense movement. When the Sethrak's head came close, he struck with his blade. Not a clean hit, but enough to wound. The creature pulled back, hissing. The fight became a battle of attrition. The Sethrak had speed and venom. Day had endurance and determination. His body slowly processed the toxin while he defended desperately, using his blade to keep the creature at distance. 15 minutes. 20. The venom's effects began to diminish. Feeling returned to his leg, though it hurt terribly. His vision cleared slightly. The Sethrak was wounded now, blood seeping from several cuts. It was becoming more cautious, less confident. Day saw his chance. The Sethrak struck again, and this time he was ready. He moved inside its reach where it could not bite effectively, and drove his blade deep into a vulnerable spot behind its head. The Sethrak went limp. Victory. Day collapsed to his knees. The venom was still in his system, still affecting him. Medical teams rushed out. They had 30 minutes before the next match. 30 minutes to treat venom poisoning and prepare for another fight. This is medically irresponsible, one of the doctors protested. He needs hours of treatment, not minutes. Then I have minutes, Day said. His voice was rough. Do what you can. They pumped him full of anti-venom and stimulants. They wrapped his leg tightly. They gave him more water, more nutrients. It was not enough, but it was all the time they had. The second opponent was the Krun Berserker. Half organic, half machine. It was a massive creature enhanced with military-grade cybernetics. Its armor was reinforced steel. Its weapons were built into its arms. It had no fear and no mercy. The arena was an urban environment now, all concrete and metal structures. The Krun entered roaring, its voice amplified by speakers in its throat. Day could barely stand. His leg was weak from the venom. His body was running on stimulants and willpower. He knew he could not outlast this opponent. The Krun's cybernetics gave it endurance that matched or exceeded his own. He needed to be smarter. The fight began and the Krun charged. Day ran, using the structures as cover. The Krun smashed through walls, crushing metal like paper. Its strength was overwhelming, but strength had limitations. The cybernetics required power. The armor was heavy. The Krun was fast for its size, but it was not agile. Day led it on a chase through the urban environment. He climbed structures that could barely support his weight, places the Krun could not follow. He used narrow passages where the Krun had to slow down, and he watched. He studied how the cybernetics moved, where the organic parts met the machine parts. He looked for weaknesses, he found them. The power cells that fed the cybernetics were armored, but not perfectly. There were cooling vents that had to remain open or the system would overheat. Day changed tactics. He stopped running away and started targeting specific points. His blade could not penetrate the heavy armor, but it could damage the cooling vents. It could sever power cables if he was precise. The Krun realized the danger and became more aggressive, taking more risks. It caught Day once, its massive hand closing around his arm, the same arm that had been wounded by Gorath. The pressure was incredible. Bones cracked, Day screamed but did not drop his blade. With his free hand, he stabbed at the exposed power cell at the Krun's hip. The blade sank in and electricity arced. The Krun systems went haywire. Its grip released. Day fell, his arm useless now. The Krun stumbled, half its body paralyzed. Day forced himself up. He approached the disabled Berserker and found the emergency shutdown port that all cybernetic systems were required to have. He activated it. The Krun collapsed. Victory. This time Day could not get up. His arm was broken. His leg was barely functional. The venom was still affecting him. He had nothing left. The medical teams carried him off on a stretcher. They had 30 minutes before Theron. No, one of the doctors said firmly. Absolutely not. This human needs surgery. His arm is broken in multiple places. He is still suffering from venom poisoning. His body is in shock. Sending him back out there would be murder. The tournament organizers hesitated. They wanted to be rid of the human, but they did not want the scandal of an obvious killing. On the stretcher, Day opened his eyes. I can fight, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. You cannot even stand, the doctor said. I can fight. Across the galaxy, humans watched and held their breath. On Earth, in cities and villages, people gathered around screens. In the research vessel, Ji-won was crying. This had gone too far. Day should withdraw. He should save himself. But she knew he would not. Because humans did not stop, even when they should. Especially when they should. The organizers made their decision. The match would proceed. They would make it clear that it was Day's choice to continue. They would not be held responsible. They stabilized his arm with a rigid brace. They injected more stimulants. They gave him every medical aid that was legal under tournament rules. It was not enough to make him healthy, but it was enough to make him functional. Barely. Theron the Unyielding entered the arena to massive applause. He was a legend. 5 tournament victories, 37 kills. He had never been defeated, never even been seriously wounded. He was massive, over 12 feet tall, covered in natural armor that had never been penetrated. His strength was legendary. His intelligence was sharp. When he saw Day being helped into the arena, barely able to walk, he stopped. For a long moment, he just looked. Then Theron did something unexpected. He spoke. His voice was translated for the crowd. "This is not honor," he said. "You can barely stand, human. Withdraw. There is no shame in knowing when you are beaten." Day looked at him. His vision was blurry. His body was screaming for rest. But he shook his head. "I can still fight." "Why?" Theron asked. "For pride? For glory? Is it worth dying for?" "For 300 people on a colony ship," Day said. "They need the prize money. They need me to win." Theron was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Then I will grant you an honorable death, warrior." The countdown began. The arena was a neutral environment, flat and open. No advantages for either fighter. When the countdown ended, Theron did not charge. He walked forward slowly, giving Day every chance to surrender. Day raised his blade with his one functional arm. His stance was weak. His leg could barely support him. But he stood. The fight was painful to watch. Theron was trying to end it quickly, to spare Day prolonged suffering. But Day would not fall. He dodged when he could, blocked when he could not dodge. He took hits that should have ended the fight but stayed on his feet through pure stubbornness. Theron began to understand what he was facing. This was not just a fighter. This was something else. Something that refused to acknowledge defeat. The human species, Theron realized, was terrifying in a way he had never imagined. Not because of strength or speed or weapons, but because they would not stop. Day fell. His leg finally gave out. He lay on the ground, broken and exhausted. Theron approached to deliver the final strike. But Day was not done. From the ground he threw his blade. It was a desperate move, poorly aimed, but it forced Theron to dodge. And in that moment of dodge, Day used his rope. The rope wrapped around Theron's leg. It would not hold the massive creature for long, but it did not need to. Day pulled himself forward using the rope, closing the distance while Theron was off balance. He had no weapon now. His blade was gone. His arm was broken. But he had his hands. He reached Theron and found a gap in the armor near the neck. With his one good hand, he pressed on the pressure point he had studied in Ji-won's data. It was a place where blood vessels were vulnerable in Theron's species. Theron tried to pull away, but Day held on. All of his remaining strength, all of his determination focused on that one point. Pressure, steady pressure. Theron's movements slowed. The blood flow to his brain was restricted. He tried to shake Day off but could not get leverage. Slowly, incredibly, Theron collapsed. The crowd was silent. Completely, utterly silent. The medical sensors confirmed unconsciousness. Day had won, but Day did not celebrate. He simply let go and fell backward. His body had given everything it had. There was nothing left. Medical teams swarmed the arena. One team for Theron, who was already recovering. Another team for Day, who was not moving. The crowd remained silent as Day was carried out. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then hundreds. Thousands. 50,000 beings of dozens of species giving respect to a warrior who had proven something they did not know could be proven. Day woke up 3 days later in a medical facility. His arm was properly set and healing. The venom was completely purged from his system. His body was recovering. Ji-won was there, sitting by his bed. When she saw him wake, she smiled through tears. "You won," she said. "You actually won." "The prize money," he started to say. "Already transferred to your colony ship," she interrupted. "They are repairing their systems now. They will be fine." Day closed his eyes in relief. "There is more," Ji-won continued. The Galactic Council has granted humanity a provisional seat. Bora negotiated it. Your victories changed everything. Humans are no longer seen as a minor species. Day nodded slowly. Good. Across the galaxy, the story spread. The human who fought apex predators and won, not through strength but through endurance, not through power but through refusal to quit. Recruitment centers saw record numbers of young humans signing up for military service, exploration corps, competitive sports. Humans who had accepted their place as a minor species now believed they could be more. In the Crimson Coliseum, the warm-up match time slot was permanently retired. They called it the Human's Folly, but the name was said with respect now, not mockery. Day eventually returned to his colony ship. He declined all offers of fame and fortune. He just wanted to be with his people, to live quietly. But when reporters managed to reach him and asked him to sum up what he had proven, he thought for a moment and then answered, "Humans are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We do not have claws or venom or armor, but we have something else. We endured the Ice Age. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We went to space on controlled explosions. We do not stop. We never stop. That is what makes us apex predators. Not what we can do in a moment, but what we can do over time. We endure, we persist, we survive." The interview was watched billions of times. It became a rallying cry for humanity across the stars. In the years that followed, humans took their place among the galactic community. Not as a minor species, but as equals. The lesson had been learned. Never underestimate prey species. Never assume weakness from appearance. And never ever challenge a human to a contest of endurance, because they will not stop. They never stop.